On the program, we shall be looking at ascendancy of Nigerians on the international stage. But first, let's look at some perspectives. The positive effects of globalization to the Nigerian economy include increased specialization and efficiency, better quality of products at reduced prices, economic of scale in production, competitiveness and increased output, technological improvement and increased managerial capabilities. In addition to it, bilateral partnership. Nigeria belongs to a number of multilateral organizations, including the United Nations, the Commonwealth of Nations, the World Trade Organization, among others. Nigeria's demographic and political weight will increase and is increasing in the coming years, with its population set to pass 400 million by 2050, and its role as a source of peacekeepers in conflict zones in Africa and elsewhere expected to continue. In doing justice to the issue, we shall dwell on a couple of these issues. My guest is a career diplomat and a former Nigerian ambassador to France and the Principality of Monaco, His Excellency Ambassador Akin Fayomi. Good to see you on the program, Your Excellency.
Thank you very much for having me.
Beautiful. Well, our focus basically looking at Nigerians ascending the global space. Let's begin with the World Trade Organization, a very recent one. The emergence of Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala as the Director General of the World Trade Organization. What are your comments?
Yes, indeed, it was a very welcome development. We all know that Dr. Okonjo-Iweala's credentials are impeccable. I mean, she can stand her own anywhere. Two-time Minister of Finance, short stint as Minister of Foreign Affairs, Managing Director of the World Bank. You can go on and on. Madam Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala has all it takes to lead any international organizations. So it was very welcomed. It was nearly scuttled by the administration under President Trump. But thankfully, when President Biden came in, we all thought that, yes, indeed, this was not because of unsuitability. It was more or less a case of having issues with African countries, which President Trump never allowed us to forget. So indeed, when it comes to picking the right person, Dr. Okonjo-Iweala, it's more than suitable, and we expect that she will reform and rejuvenate the World Trade Organization in a way that will make it more relevant to issues on the international scene.
As a career diplomat, what positives for, let's begin with Nigeria, Africa?
We really welcomed it. Nigeria, it shows if we put our right foot forward, we definitely will move. And we have too many superlative human beings, individual superpowers, you know, if I use that word to call them, that there's nowhere we want to go that we don't excel. You can see our record even in the USA. Look at what President Biden has done. About 2 or 3 of his very important senior positions went to Nigerian Americans. There's nowhere we put our people, the best people, that is, the best candidate. If we don't allow other factors to go into it, if we look at meritocracy, then definitely Nigerians can hold their own in any field of human endeavor. And that is why her coming in there, it's just a series that we had recently. She's just topping, is the icing on the cake.
Now, Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations is a Nigerian, President of the African Development Bank is Nigerian, and the latest WTO, and a couple of others. Maybe you have the list. I don't have. I can exhaust the list now. Is it all about occupying these spaces? How can we leverage on this as a country?
Oh, indeed, we can and we should leverage on these personalities that are on the world stage. We can add to it, like you said, the recent election of Ambassador Bankole Adeoye as the Commissioner for Peace and Security
of the AU, yes.
The African. You can also add to it the president of the African Import-Export Bank, Mr. Benedict Rama. So we have them both in the diplomatic fields and political field and economic fields. So indeed, it is up to us now to know how to use it to our advantage. Obviously, we don't expect them to go there with a Nigerian agenda. No way, we can't think like that. But at the same time, they will have enough influence, enough clout to pursue what we need here in Nigeria and what indeed African continent. Don't forget when they mentioned Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, they always say the first African and then first female, so they didn't say Nigerian so that shows you that our agenda is not there just for us, but we have to leverage on it. We have to know how we can make our trade more competitive through the WTO, through the instrumentalities of the WTO. Of course, we have to go to the African Free Trade Continental area, which we have just signed, which have just come into being. So it comes in a good way that we are having an African, albeit in Nigeria, at the WTO, at the same time as Africa is launching its own free trade area. So they go hand in hand. They will help lower, cost of living, also increase standards of living, make sure that there is competitiveness in a positive manner, strengthen economic development. Issues like that are in the purview of the WTO. And Madam Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, coming from a less developed country like Nigeria and generally a less developed continent like Africa, she would definitely be on her entry how to make Africa competitive.
It has been the position to make the World Trade Organization what it should be. But one thing has been lingering before now, the EPA, Economic Partnership Agreement. Nigeria had refused to sign that agreement on the premise that it's already in violation of the World Trade Organization Treaty. So what do you think she should do as a first assignment to ensure that Nigeria is at par with this document and Nigeria signs and is part of this EPA?
Yes, the EPA has been very contentious over the years. It's not patterned in a way that will benefit trade from African countries. Don't forget that the WTO, the precursor to WTO was the GATT, General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs. Yep. We rely a lot on tariffs because we import a lot, and that means custom duties and industry duties, company taxes, and all that stuff. So the EPA is designed as it is now to favor the Western countries, the developed economies. With her there now, I think we might have a rethink, or there should be, if I can advise her, a resurgence, of the EPA in terms of looking at it in a better manner, not necessarily to favor African economies totally, but to give them more competitiveness with their European and American counterparts. She has so many things on her plate, but let's just pray that the EPA will be on the front burner, so to say.
Shortly after the last Nigeria-United States Binational Commission, you were worried and you were concerned why it should always be one country as against 53 African countries. For instance, China, Africa meeting, India, Africa, Russia, Africa. Now, with the avalanche of persons we have in the international scene today, regulating and controlling big multinationals like this, when by your projection, are we likely to have maybe a Nigerian American convergence in Nigeria, telling the Americans or telling the Russians or telling the Indians or African countries converging in one country, and that country telling Africans what to do?
Yes, you know that I share that concern very much. I likened it to a school principal standing there and all the students walking by, shaking hands with the school principal. We've never liked it, but this is not a problem for Nigeria per se. because this is under the auspices of the African Union. It's the African Union that organizes and signs up to these so-called bilateral, whereas they are not bilateral, because there is one country against 53 countries. But they look at Africa as one country when they say US Africa, India Africa, Iran Africa, Turkey Africa. It's posteriors, in my thinking. So it's for us, now, yes, we can use the presence of Ambassador Dewey as a commissioner at the African Union to say, look, enough of these jamborees, more or less, I call them that. We only have a few that we can really link up to. Let us go more bilateral. Of course, we have bilateral relations with America. That's like BNC, Binational Commission. We have bilateral relations with the Chinese. We have bilateral relations with the UK. Apart from this so-called Africa this, Africa that. Let us look more towards the bilateral. Let us focus more on the bilateral. Let each country go their own way and sort themselves out bilaterally. This issue of Africa being counted as one country against another country, and then you are doing trade with them or doing security with them, doing that, it has not really worked out. In spite of the Chinese Africa, which is one of the most successful, or which is very consistent, in spite of having FOCAC, that's the Chinese Africa Friendship Association, they do this twice biannually. You find out that individually, Nigeria, China, we have our own business with them, infrastructure development and all that. Uganda with the Chinese, Kenya with the Chinese. They are just building a highway in Nairobi, with the Chinese. So all these are not under the umbrella of Africa. So I would think that with one of us there at the African Union, they might tend to now say, look, let African Union face African issues here. There are quite a lot. Let bilateral countries, let each country go bilaterally with whichever country they want to trade with, or to deal with, or to look for security with. I think that's the right way to go. And I'm sure we use the influence of having the commissioner after a very long time to achieve this.
Well, there's no doubt the fact that the last hope for the world today in terms of where we still have huge, untapped, abundant natural resources rests, and is more or less today maybe a new phase, scramble for Africa. In your own thinking, what kind of diplomacy do you think Africans, and indeed Nigeria, should be playing now that it is clear that truly the global community looks up to Africa for so many things?
Yes, indeed. Africa is the continent of the future, more or less. And that's why I'm not surprised that there's in quotes, a scramble for Africa all over, particularly for our natural resources, particularly for our markets. You can see the teeming population in Nigeria alone, over 200 million. Not to talk of the rest of Africa in terms of the market that we bring to their products and all that. So there is no doubt that they have to scramble, we use that word again, for Africa. But it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing for our economy. It's a good thing to have friends that even though they are looking for your products, for your natural resources, and you are looking for their products, it's a win-win situation. And then, for instance, let's take security in Nigeria. It is in everybody's interest then that Nigeria is stable, and then they can trade with us. If we are in chaos, then obviously they will not be able to benefit from trading or having anything to do with Nigeria. So it's in their interest also to ensure that we have a stable polity. And then it's also in our interest to capitalize on that and say, look, we need assistance in areas A, B, C, D, which we are doing with the Chinese, our railways and bridges and steel company, they are stepping into that. The Americans, the French, look, let's help us with insurgency issues and all that, sell us arms and things like that. So it's a win-win situation. Diplomatically, that is what diplomacy is all about, reciprocity. And then you can extend it into so many areas, even judicial areas, even issues of people siphoning our money and keeping it abroad. We are getting them back gradually from Swiss banks, from Jersey banks. It's all interwoven. So I see that should be more encouraging than to say, let us go under the banner of the African Union. I would rather everybody does its own under its own banner bilaterally. African Union can come in when we are talking of other issues on the continent, like health matters, like security, like insurgencies and stuff like that. We need each other to do that. Even the African Continental Free Trade Area, which is just coming, is to promote competitiveness among African countries instead of fighting among ourselves. We can then complement each other, and it makes us stronger at the end of the day. Each country gets stronger, the continent also gets stronger and more attractive to the outside world, the Western world.
Spirit of reciprocity, you have clearly said it in terms of diplomacy. Nigeria belongs to so many alliances. The very latest one is the United Nations Alliance on Poverty Eradication. Nigerians are playing out. In short, let me give other examples. Former President Jonathan is ECOWAS envoy to Mali and a few other countries I cannot specifically say. The former vice president is playing another role within ECOWAS. So basically, looking at multilateralism, looking at global competitiveness, how can we use all these spaces to leverage Nigeria?
Thank you very much. Yeah, you can. Let's use the United Nations, for instance. You mentioned the Deputy Secretary General, Mrs. Amina Mohammed, being there. And you can see that the focus, why she's still there now, is more on Africa, African matters, African issues. I'm sure if it had been an Indian who is there, this is not to disparage any country, but it means focus will go to Asia. It's just natural tendencies that you do that. And that is why people fight tooth and nail, to get their own elected into such positions so that they can leverage that and assist us. Look at when Professor Bande, our permanent representative at the United Nations, was the president of the General Assembly for a year. Unfortunately, it's only yearly. Focus was on poverty eradication in Africa and in Asia, and fighting diseases which are more in Africa and in Asia and Latin America to some extent, but not in Western Europe or America. So we're already using that. That is what it means, And then that's why we also mentioned Mrs. Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, whereby she will focus on getting us a better deal at the EPA, making sure that our trade is competitive, making sure that standards of living are improved through trade, of course. So it is the usual thing. That's why countries go all out. It's a lot of money to campaign for these positions. A lot of money, a lot of political will. Your president will be all over the place. Special envoys will be sent all over the world, making sure that you get this position. Why do you want to go to all that trouble? It's because you know that you are going to benefit from it. And it is normal, it's natural. South Korea wanted to do the same by bringing their Minister of Trade. But unfortunately, Madam Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala has better credentials, and she was more supported by everybody. The whole of Africa, 53 countries are rooting for her, then some from Latin America, some from Europe itself. And so there is no issue about her getting that position, if not for Donald Trump's blocking it. So it's natural that when we have our people there, we expect them to lean a bit, towards us, towards our problems, and then to see how they can get us out of it. It might not even be WTO alone. For instance, Madam Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, through her network of Gavi, that is the vaccines issue, and all that, can nudge these organizations and say, look, Nigeria, Ghana, South Africa, Senegal, they don't have these vaccines as much as you do. Canada is trying to get even 4 times for each, four per person for their population. That's a bit greedy. So we might say, look, before you do that, let all the other countries also get some. We can also leverage on that. So these are the issues on the international scene where diplomacy has a lot of roles to play. And we are happy that we have strong institutions, and then some of them being headed by Nigerians and Africans.
Okay. How can we also leverage on this class of personalities in the globe coming from Nigeria to surmount challenges like recharging the Lake Chad Basin, insurgency challenge, as much as a couple of mileages have been covered, the economy, and other environmental issues, because it's a matter of trying to, as much as the conditions are there, you can bend backwards, as difficult as it may be, to still use it to leverage and surmount some of these challenges in the country.
Yes, we definitely have the opportunities to do that. For instance, at the African Union, the political affairs used to be a separate commissioner there, then peace and security, another separate commissioner. Now it has been merged to have more focus, and that's why it is now commissioner for political affairs, peace and security. And the very first person who was career diplomat. Now he's there. His agenda, for instance, will say, look, peace and security on the African continent. Where do we start from? We have Boko Haram, not just for Nigeria, but 4 or 5 countries: Niger, Chad, Cameroon, Benin Republic to some extent. So it's not only Nigeria. We have on the Sahel, Al Qaeda in Maghreb, Akim. We have issue of Western Polisario and Morocco. We have so he can say, look, let us channel part of our resources to fighting the insurgency of Boko Haram, because it affects about 5 or 6 countries in Africa. It's not just a Nigerian problem. So that's leveraging our position in that aspect. We can go towards the United Nations, where we have the DSG, like I mentioned earlier on, and say, look, we have problems of fighting diseases that are even eradicated in the Western world. We are still fighting cholera, we are fighting tuberculosis, we are fighting polio, and all that. Let us shift focus on all these areas so that we can help assist these countries, not just Nigeria, but it's because she's in Nigeria, Nigeria is part of the countries, it will now affect other countries on the continent of Africa. So that means we are leveraging our position there to the benefit of not just Nigeria, but to other countries. That's the beauty of it. So it will not be as if we are greedy. Oh, they put their person there, we got them elected, we help them to put so and so here. They are just keeping to themselves. Well, it's going to affect many other countries as well. So this is the beauty of having fought for an election and winning it, and then using it not just to better your own standard of living, but other people around you and even further afield. So we are hopeful, and that's why it's always good to put our best foot forward. We have talent in Nigeria. The manpower is superb. So we always feel the right candidate for any position. We definitely will make waves anywhere we are, and we are very delighted that Mr. President put a backing for Dr. Adesina at the FGB, even though he wasn't his candidate per se. He was President Jonathan's minister before. He didn't say he was PDP or not. He backed him. WTO backed her. Ambassador Adeoye, career diplomat, backed him. So that shows you, if the political will, if the leadership is there, then the sky is the limit as far as Nigerians are concerned.
What's your worry regarding the takeoff of trade, the African Continental Free Trade Area? Trade has taken off, no common currency, dependent on a foreign currency to do trade in a common trade zone in Africa. Are you worried?
Not at all. We can't run before walking, so we can't start thinking about a common currency. The denominator is the US dollar. Even the Chinese use it. Even the Russians use it. Even though they have their own currency and they are also powerful. Even the Europeans with pounds and all that. The world trade currency is the US dollars.
If we sustain this and gain more, what's your projection in the next 5 years?
Oh, brilliant. I think it has shown it more open to the whole world that it's not just propaganda when they say, for instance, in the US, that the most educated ethnic group are the Nigerians. The most ethnic group that has the more PhDs, more than any other person, are the Nigerians. So you see, not to talk of in Africa, where you say out of every 4 or 5 black person, 1 is a Nigerian. So you see, we've been carrying this weight and we have not been using it. But now that we are putting our best foot forward, I keep using that phrase, I can expect that in the next 5 years and even beyond, more and more Nigerians will be recognized and put into positions of responsibilities because they've seen that we can do it. That's why we have to ensure that our people that are there are not just there as figureheads. We have to ensure whatever we want to do as a government to make sure that Dr. Amina Mohammed as UNSD Deputy SG performs very, very well with our corporation. Mrs. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala performs very, very well. Dr. Ambassador Adeoye performs very well. Dr. Adeshina performing very well. All our people, they need the support of not just Nigerians, but the whole of African continent, because the success of the Nigerian is more or less the success of Africa. That's why they said the first female, the first African, and all that. So I say that with more Nigerians in areas, positions of high responsibilities, and they are performing them well, then it means that even if they are looking for a candidate from Africa, Nigeria will be the first place that they will look for. After all, 1 out of 5 are Nigerians, and that means you have the best of the best in Nigeria here. So you can tap into what other people are doing, that is our nationals are doing. We pray that they do very well. That will open more opportunities for other Nigerians to also step up the plate and into other international areas on the stage.
Your Excellency, Ambassador Akin Fayomi, it was nice chatting with you on the program. Thank you so much.
Always a pleasure being with you.
Thank you. That was a chat with Nigeria's former ambassador to France and the Principality of Monaco, Ambassador Akin Fayomi. We looked at the ascendancy of Nigerians on the international stage. That's another program. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.